So, good afternoon, everybody. Normally, of course, on Sunday afternoons, there's a talk by Swami Shantivratananda on the Narada Bhakti Sutras. This is not a replacement for that talk. The series will continue when he returns. But I thought maybe something on the subject of the path of devotion or the nectar of love, if you will, or the bliss of love. So we can start with our usual prayer for teacher and student. By now you will all know it, so you can join in. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunuktu Saha Viryam Karavavahi Tejasvinavaditam Mastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both in terms of our study. May we work together with great energy. May we get illumination from our studies. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. The word love, of course, has so many different meanings and contexts. We use it for a wide variety of people and objects. And yet, love is not a tangible thing in the sense that we can bring a cup of it and deliver it. The thing that we love, we can maybe bring a cup of it. If you love, for example, chocolate or a chocolate drink, or if you love some kind of special food or fruit, that can be brought. But love itself is an intangible thing. Very often we find it very difficult to prove the existence of any kind of love because of its intangibility. There are certain schools of thought which say that we will only believe what we can tangibly experience. And that, of course, relegates the whole experience of love, hate, or any emotion, or dreams. How do I prove that you dreamt something? Well, I can only take your word for it. But there are certain signs of love. Let us take, for example, human love. Human love has its biological and physiological reflections in the way we walk, the way we sit, flushing of the cheeks, and all the rest of it. And internally, we know that there are certain chemicals of oxytocin and so on that play in the brain and give us a great experience of joy and bliss. And as long as our feeling is orientated toward the object of our love, then the chemical interactions and stimulations will take place. And so biologically, we can have an experience of joy. So there is a kind of measurement of bliss. The Taittiriya Upanishad actually ranks what bliss is. It gives us a whole kind of measurement of it. I will kind of paraphrase it in English. It says, suppose there is a noble young person who is well-read, in other words, well-educated, very swift, firm, and strong. In other words, somebody where everything is going well in his life. And let the whole world full of wealth belong to him. Imagine that condition. You would think you would be happy if your bank account was full and overflowing, if you had no financial worries or difficulties, if you had great physical strength, that you would be extremely happy. And so we assume that this is so, And we can take this happiness as a unit of bliss, 1 unit. And if we times that by 100, make that 100-fold happier, then that would be the bliss of Gandharvas, heavenly beings who have all of that, but in addition, they don't have any physical ills. So you may be healthy, but there's a possibility of sickness coming, and they don't have that. And they are to some extent immortal, so death is not a problem for them. And we can say that that is 100 times that unit of somebody who seems to be completely happy on this earth. But even if we take that measure, and this is a repeated phrase in the Taittiriya Upanishad, and when we find these repetitions, they may be monotonous, of course, but it serves to endorse the point. What is the point? If you take that 100%, that 100 times the 1 unit of bliss, then it would be the same as some wise person who is free from desires. In the first place, you imagine all desires are fulfilled, but still some form of desire may be there. In the case of the Gandharvas, there may be also some small desires which are there, but if you are completely fulfilled, if you're celestial, with no obvious difficulties in your way, no obstacles, then it's equivalent to somebody who has no desires whatsoever. Now we have to find out what we mean by desires. Desires are egocentric positions that assume I am a body with a mind, a body-mind complex, that has some internal deficits. I'm not entirely happy. Inside there is some kind of noticeable vacuum. And I look to the external world, being normally externally orientated, and I try to get from the outside and fill my pot on the inside. And life then becomes a continuous search. We think that birds in flight are extremely happy, and they look happy and they look free because they're always flying around, and they're always chirping. But actually, if I were a bird, I'd be constantly worried. I'd be looking for food. I'd be restless. I'd be seeing what area of my territory is under threat. Was there competition for food? I'd be on the lookout in the early morning for worms wriggling in the ground. So appearances are deceptive. We may admire the freedom of a bird to fly and how sweet a bird is and how sweetly they sing. But actually, from the bird's point of view, it's all struggle and competition. So desires are really survival mechanisms to make sure that we thrive in a world that is essentially to do with the senses. And 100 times that bliss of human Gandharvas is 1 measure of bliss of the divine Gandharvas, celestial beings, and so on. But the formula is the same as one who is free from desires, and it goes on. And 100 times that bliss of the celestials is 1 measure of bliss of the mains enjoying their long estate, and likewise somebody free from desires. So the formula continues. 100 times that bliss, again, you see, as maybe the equivalent to the bliss of heavenly born devas, divine beings with administrative posts in the universe, who don't worry about mortality, immortality, and they've attained their divinity by means of their virtue and their Vedic sacrifices and so on. But it's equivalent to that who is a wise person free from desires. And it goes on, 100 times that, and so on, 100 times that, 100 times that. Whatever the formula comes up with, always it is equivalent to a great person, a wise person, somebody who feels fulfilled, free from their desires, that is, free from any incompleteness. That peace prayer, Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnam, Madhuchate, Purnasya Punamadaya Punamayavat Vishyate. That is, fullness is everywhere, so nothing more to attain, nothing more to complain. Then you see the formula goes on, even to the point of the supreme of the celestials, and it goes on one measure of the bliss of all of those, the creator of all beings, and 100 times of that. See, so it goes on. How does it end? Well, he who knows this formula, when he has departed from this world, reaches and comprehends the internal self. And the internal self is our mystic and philosophical language for God. And so, when you reach the self, consisting of all the various layers, the Panchakosha, the 5 levels and 5 layers, the physical, one made from food, one made from energy, and so on, when you go through that, and then you come to this understanding of the Supreme Self that sits within. It contains this understanding, the self which consists of bliss, that's another level or layer. And he who knows this is the final parting shot. He who knows the bliss of this internal self, equivalent to Brahman, from whence all speech with the mind turns away, unable to reach it, fears nothing. And if you fear nothing, then the contrary is desire. Kind of juxtaposition, like a coin, desire on the one side, fear on the other, one pulling away from the other. So he does not torment himself with the thought, why didn't I do what was good? Or why aren't I a better person? Or any element of guilt or remorse or any sense of incompleteness or improvement or self-improvement. Why did I do what is bad, and so on? He who thus knows the reality underlying both these aspects, the light and the shade, the good and the bad, frees himself. He who knows both frees himself. And so this is the Upanishad. And the Taittiriya ends that section with that comment on bliss. Now, we're all looking for bliss. We're all looking for some happiness of some kind. And very often, this kind of bliss that we are looking for, which is really a superlative of happiness, is tied up with the emotion of it. And so what is that releases all these chemicals in the human context? It is a kind of nectar if it's constant and flowing. And so we can compare it to nectar. Nectar, a kind of viscous fluid, like honey, and it constantly flows without a break. Now we can attain bliss in certain circumstances, or happiness in certain circumstances, but can we sustain it? And is love equivalent to it? And I'm going to suggest that it is, and there are scriptural supports for it. So the love of God is attained and it becomes blissful. That is the highest love we can have, but we can compare it to human love. And if we talk about the Narada Bhakti Sutras, it does exactly that. Now, what is the state then of somebody who has this kind of love? It's not the kind of state that you would really expect. The Bhagavad Gita describes such a person, and we may have some kind of difficulty in understanding the detachment that has resulted from it. Well, the person who hates no being, who is friendly and compassionate to everybody, who is free from the feeling of I and mine, even-minded in pain and pleasure and forbearing. And this suggests that the greatest obstacle to this supreme love of any kind would be egoism. And after all, human love is a sample, is a taste, a foretaste of the supreme love of that constant being that is the most lovable. What do we deem to be the most lovable? It's to do with a kind of flow. There's a free flow of giving. Supposing you have a neighbor, they knock on the door every day, assuming that you're not disturbed by it, bringing a free gift without asking for any return. Please take this, please take this. I'm worried about you. I saw you had nothing to eat yesterday. I brought an apple pie. And assuming that the person likes apple pie, they'll be very thankful for it. Next day, some flowers. Next day, something else. Don't you want payment for it? Don't you want thanks for it? No, no thanks necessary. No payment necessary. All freely given. Surely that person would be lovable to you. So why should we love the Supreme Being? Because that Supreme Being is lovable, but we don't immediately realize it because we take for granted some things. We take for granted that the sun will rise in the morning. We take for granted it will set in the evening. We take for granted that things will grow around us, a garden, roses in this season. Right now, today, a devotee brought some beautiful flowers, rose flowers from their own garden, and the whole place is infused with the scent. What a wonderful thing. So love, how do we measure it? How will you have a cup of love? Well, we register it in terms of the behavioral aspect of it. The evidence of it is in giving. Somebody gives you something, not expecting any return. And there's no hate for any being, so it's completely impartial. That's a difficult thing because we're always in judgmental mood. And we say, I love this person because they give me gifts every day. But the other person is a difficult neighbor. I don't really love them. In fact, I wish they'd move. I wish they'd go to another location. And friendly and compassionate, naturally to all. Is it a forced thing? No. Friendly and compassionate to all is a spontaneous outgoing of love. Free from the feeling of I and mine, because most of the love that we have is love of ourselves. It's selfish, it's egoistic love. Examine it. I love you if you love me. If you don't love me, then I wish you were dead. That kind of thing, see? So there's no restriction to this love. There's no criteria for it. There's no reward for it. It's simply a free thing that is flowing. How to attain such a thing? Now, what is the connection between individual love and universal love when we find the nectar of that love within ourselves? And in the context of a love of a universal God, we become universally loving because we register and recognize this being in everything, through everything, as everything, ultimately beyond everything. Our love increases, our heart expands. Even minded in pain and pleasure, nirmamo, niraham karaha, sama dukkha sukha shami. Forbearing also, titiksha. So somebody does something to you or some circumstances pinches you in life, an unexpected thing, you take it. What cannot be cured has to be endured. That attitude to take. Ever content, I'm not looking for bliss. See? Samtustaha satatam yogi. Ever content, contemplative, self-controlled, and possessed of firm conviction, with mind and intellect dedicated to one being, the source of all our happiness, the blissful base which we ultimately register. There you are. Let this flow of love go to you. And he, my devotee, is dear to me. Is it a reciprocal dearness, says Krishna? No. Automatically you're dear to me because there is this intimate connection, like two lovers, intimate connection. And so there are various attitudes in bhakti yoga that can be adopted. You take one position, another position. What is the wonderful, most supreme position we can think of? We think of Krishna, Radha, Sita, Ram. We don't say Ram, we say Sita, Ram. We connect the two. We say Radha, Krishna. We connect the two. Shiva, Shakti, we connect the two. And this kind of love, therefore, is so blissful automatically. And we can equate it to this human love, which is ever blissful and joyful. And when it is spiritualized, it becomes even more so. So, he from whom the world gets no trouble, and whom the world cannot trouble. I'm not troubling the world is not troubling me. I'm not allowing the world to impinge on my blissfulness, because I'm ever in that state of content blissfulness, because there's nothing other than fullness. There are no gaps to fill. There's no hollow to fill up with from the outside. And he is free from joy. Oh, wait, you said it's all joyful. Yes, bliss, don't forget the ranking. 100 times its unit. See, the person who has everything, wealth, good looks, strength, all the rest of it, that's 1 unit of human bliss. We can call that joy. And joy is a temporary thing that arrives and leaves. But a constant joy, we can call this bliss. So, free from joy in that sense, a temporary thing that arrives and a seeking for it. Or even things which are not joyful, and they're enumerated, and they're all egocentric. I want to be happy is an egocentric position. I'm envious of somebody else who is happy. And in the fruit of fullness, I'm envious of them. They seem to have everything. I want that. Free from fear, free from worry, free from anxiety. All of this then will naturally, by virtue of it being removed, and what remains is your blissful base. So you can see how it works. It's really a removing of obstacles. When I remove all the obstacles in the way of understanding my own true nature, which is blissful, and which is described ultimately as bliss, Ananda, Sat, Chit, Ananda. It is existent, that means I don't have to look for it. What are you doing? I'm looking for God. Oh, I didn't know he was missing. See, it's that old tale of the man who goes, I told it a number of times, the man who had a little too much drink, and there's a preacher on the side, on a corner, converting people, and he wants to baptize them and put their heads in the water, and then they'll all be saved, and maybe he'll get some financial reward from it. I don't know. It happens. And so he takes the vulnerable person, the drunken person, and says, come on, come on. If I can convert this man, then the whole crowd will be amazed, takes him by the scruff of the neck and dunks him in the water until he's gasping for air. Now, there's a parallel story that Ramakrishna gives. What is yearning? Because we yield this love when we yearn. When we yearn, as we do for any other object, like a miser yearns for wealth, or the feeling of young lovers yearning for each other, or the mother and the son, and we have so many examples of yearning. So we yearn for wealth, we yearn for all kinds of things. That means a kind of gnawing feeling that we have, and it has to be fulfilled somewhere. So it's compared to, what is it? If I dunk you in the water and hold you there, will you not be gasping for air? Yes. How did it feel? I thought I was going to die. I thought I was just desperate for air. Yes, in this way, if you yearn in this way for the highest principle, the highest truth, then you will easily see God or understand the truth. You'll get to your blissful base where everything is already full. So this preacher thought, let me dunk him in the water. Then he brings him out. Did you see Jesus? No, dunks him back again. Bubbles coming, desperate thrashing eventually comes up. Did you see Jesus? No, put him back in. Eventually, out of desperation, he says, this man is going to drown. I better pull him out, gasping for air. Now, did you see Jesus? No. Are you sure he fell in here? So when we're looking for this, is God missing? Should we put something in the search? Missing. Put every poster up on a tree. Have you seen God? He seems to be missing. It's not an absentee God, already present. No, what's in the way? We have to remove what's in the way. The removal obstacles will yield the highest love and the highest bliss. And the love is also a process. So it is the only system, the system of the path of love, Bhakti Yoga, that yields its own reward. Its own reward is the same as the process. And it is easy and it is natural. And anybody who has any human emotion, it will be suited for them. And for this reason, it is said that it is the path for everybody. Because in this day and age, everybody gets angry. Everybody has some kind of emotion of some kind or other. Anybody who has any kind of emotion, that is energy that can be channeled in a more positive and useful way, a giving way, a generous way, which is what we call love. And that has no fear, no worry. See, the triad of conditions for love. What are they? There's no reward. There's no rival. And there's no fear. And he who is independent, pure, efficient, indifferent, untroubled, who is selfless in all his undertakings, Sarvarambha Parityagi, who is thus devoted to me, dear to me, and he who neither rejoices nor dislikes, is a simmering blissfulness underneath, not elated under certain conditions. Somebody praises me, I feel puffed up and elated. Somebody blames me, or whole body language changes, my shoulders hunch, my depression sets in, people don't like me, what a pity, where's the hanging rope, etc. So he who neither rejoices nor dislikes, nor grieves nor desires, who renounces good and evil, any pair of opposites, and is full of devotion, naturally is dear to me. And it goes on. If you're the same to enemies, friends, it doesn't really matter. You don't discriminate against anybody. Who is also the same in honor or dishonor, praise or blame. Any of the pair of opposites, hot or cold, who is free from attachment, to whom praise and blame are equal, who is silent, content with anything. Homeless, not that a person has literally no home, but who cares? Because the whole world is your home. You're a universalist, and steady-minded, full of devotion, that one is dear to me. Those devotees who follow this nectar-like religion. Nectar-like religion. Yetu dharmyamritam, nectar, amritam, nectar. Idam yatoktam, paryopasati, shatadhana, matparama, bhaktaste tva me priyaha. Those devotees who follow this nectar-like religion, with faith, complete, without a single aspect of doubt or a single drop of doubt, with me as their supreme goal, exceedingly dear to me. Supreme goal means all my energy is directed in this way. And many times, multiple times, that phrase comes, fix your mind on me. So that requires a concentration. Whatever practice you have, whatever yoga path you follow, the discipline of concentration will always have to be there, because our difficulty is a psychological difficulty. It requires a psychological remedy. Now, this is at the end of this chapter on devotion. And it doesn't begin like that, since it's the end, of course. It tells us, it gives us an option. It tells us, and Krishna tells us, that this path is easy for everyone. Because as long as we feel embodied, then we will have to set up a relationship that echoes the human relationship. And it's not an accident that we have a feeling of love for other people. If we didn't have this, we would surely suspect that God is not love. But every religion dedicated to this path of devotion says God is love. What is the supreme commandment in the Old Testament? The source of all the other systems of self-development. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your strength. In other words, all your energy that normally would be dissipated anywhere. Dissipated in such a way, the light that we are sharing today is all dissipated. We're able to see each other. Supposing you gathered all those rays and concentrated in a laser that can cut through steel, see how powerful that is. And so several things are necessary in spiritual practice. But it all boils down to renunciation. Renunciation. Now that's a difficult thing, because what should we renounce? If you're a karma yogi, what will you renounce? You renounce the fruits of your activities. What will you do if you're a jnana yogi? You'll reject, you'll renounce all the things which are fleeting and temporary. What will you do if you are a dhyana yogi, that is a Raja yogi, dedicated to meditation? Well, you'll give up all the things which give you pain, ultimately. And there's a trap here, because pleasure can ultimately give you pain. So you'll give up all the things that are deviating you from your concentrated effort in meditation, and using those things anyway, familiar things and memories, but guiding them in a different way, a more fruitful way. All right, that's fine. What about bhakti yoga? What will you give up? You give up all your small loves. Now here comes Swami Vivekananda, who's describing this in that section, which is really to do with parabhakti. He has a specific section, renunciation from love. We see love everywhere in nature, he begins. Whatever in society is good and great and sublime is the working out of that love. Whatever in society is very bad, nay, diabolical, is also the ill-directed working out of the same emotion of love. He sees it purely as an energy. It is the same emotion that gives us the pure and holy conjugal love between husband and wife, or between, in bhakti yoga, two lovers, as well as the sort of love which goes to satisfy the lower forms, so the lowest forms of animal passion. The emotion is the same, but its manifestation is different in different cases. It's the same feeling of love, well or ill-directed, that impels one person to do good and to give up all he has to the poor, while makes another one cut the throats of his brethren and take away all their possessions. The former loves others as much as the latter loves himself, and so it goes on. Then he goes on to say, and in poetic language he puts it, Bhakti yoga is the science of higher love. It shows us how to direct it. It shows us how to control it, how to manage it, how to use it, how to give it a new aim, as it were, and from it obtain the highest and most glorious results. That is how to make it lead us to spiritual blessedness. Bhakti yoga doesn't say, give up. Where does renunciation come in then? It doesn't say give up. It only says love. Love the highest. But what will you do when you love? All the other loves fall away. All the other attachments fall away by themselves, easily and naturally. And everything low naturally falls off from him, the object of whose love is the highest. Then he goes into his poetic phase. I cannot tell anything about thee except that thou art my love. Thou art beautiful. Oh, thou art beautiful. Thou art beauty itself. What is, after all, really required of us in this yoga is that our thirst after the beautiful should be directed to the highest principle. What is the beauty in the human face, in the sky, in the stars, and in the moon? It is only the partial apprehension of the real all-embracing divine beauty. And then he quotes from the Upanishads, "He shining, everything shines. It is through his light that all things shine." Take this high position of bhakti which makes you forget at once all your little personalities. It is the personalities that give you difficulties, egocentric positions that feel I have to present myself in a certain way to the world because I feel inadequate, or I feel that I am sensitive to what other people think of me. Take yourself away from all the world's little selfish clingings. Do not look upon humanity as the center of all your human and higher interests. Stand as a witness, as a student, and observe the phenomena of nature. Then he goes on to say, have the feeling of personal non-attachment with regard to other things and see how this mighty feeling of love is working itself out in the world. And then he goes on to say, yes, sometimes a little friction is produced, but that is only the course of the struggle to attain the higher and real love. Now, in this series of Bhakti Yoga lectures that Swami Vivekananda gives, the first deals with the principle of love and so on, but this is Parabhakti he's talking about, a whole section, how to take this love and move it in a higher way. And the higher way means a more of an opening, more expansive, more generous, more universal, and more blissful. It is like a nectar flowing. So we have to examine what is stopping the flow. The principal thing that is stopping the flow is egocentric position, egoism, my own self. Love of self has to be replaced, has to be transmuted. Why should we love God? Because God is lovable. How do you come to this conclusion? Now, there are some practical things which will cultivate this love, because if we're talking of this principle that we call God, for most people it is an intangible thing. And therefore, something that is intangible to us, we have to make tangible. We have to use our imagination. We have to make a form. And this is where the principle of Ishtadevata comes in, a chosen ideal. We have to bring this loving, lovable entity into our own frame. And we have to see it in a human way. We have to see that the human love is just an echo of this divine love. What other lover do we have that supplies us freely the capacity to digest our food, no matter what stupid things we eat? Continues doing it. I come as digestive food, digestive fire, Vaishvanara. I digest the 4 kinds of food. The Bhagavad Gita tells us, Krishna tells us, I digest 4 kinds of food. I am responsible for memory as well as its absence. Look up here, when we lose a memory and try to recall it, there's a direction that the eyes move in. See, what was the name of that person is up to the left here. So there's a whole filing section over there. Obviously, we assume that there are names going to be presented to us. What was the name of that person? I can't remember. Oh, lack of remembrance is down here. And then it occurs to us, yes. Yes is up here. It comes to us. We're told that memory, as well as its loss, comes from this beloved filing officer within us. I'm very forgetful. Don't worry. You have a filing officer who will present the file sooner or later. Have faith in that. That's the supreme lover that controls your memory. And when you sleep and dream, sorts out all your problems. In dreams, there's a category of dreams called problem-solving dreams. A category of dreams called wish-fulfilling dreams. All supplied by the supreme lover, keeping the heartbeat going, keeping the breath flowing, repairing all the cells of the body, and shining through them as life, lending its own life to me and allowing me to call it my life. My life is good, my life is bad. Who said it was your life? You didn't examine it properly. There's a life giver. He's shining, all things shine. Wherever we see any beauty, the clue is internal to that is the beauty that presents itself. Behind it is always that beauty. The superficial beauty that we see, behind that is a much deeper beauty. Behind the things that we love, behind it is a much deeper supreme lover. And so we can look anywhere we like as evidence for this amiable lover, which we call love itself. And every religion registers God is love. For that reason, should we not cultivate this love? How do we cultivate it? By noticing all the free-flowing gifts that come to us, the free-flowing grace everywhere. And as Ramakrishna's example, given so many times, the wind of God's grace is ever flowing. We but have to set the sail. We have to match it. And we will discover that every movement toward it is reciprocated with 100 steps toward us. Every time we make a move to open, the other side, as it were, opens more for us. Come, my child. And that is why God, as we call it, comes out of the amorphous, the nebulous area of I don't know what it is, to the area, oh, I know exactly what it is. It is my mother, it is my father, it is my closest friend, it is my lover, it is everything that fulfills me in an intimate and personal way. And when I think of this and move on it, it is called prayer. So the first thing is we should pray. If you don't have this love or this yearning, pray for this appreciation and pray for this love is the first thing we should do. And then Sri Ramakrishna gives us other clues. He tells us, holy company. Seek holy company, seek the company of those who have this aspect of love and who are loving themselves. They don't turn you away. In the afternoon, maybe a person wants a nap or something, a knock on the door, a ring of the bell. No, come, come. See, the great saint Tyagaraja writes a song like that. A visitor comes unexpectedly. And some people may have the point of view, you see, it's a Sunday afternoon. I don't really want visitors. I want to rest. I want to relax. I don't really want to entertain visitors. It's all about me, the entertainer, not about the other person. That they came all the way came to visit me. Should I not be a guest, understanding that, among other things, let thy mother be a god to you, father be a god to you, guru, and so on. Let your guest be a god unto you. It's the very heart of hospitality. Why should we be hospitable? Because we are seeing the dressed up form of the Lord. And he's a devotee, Tyagaraja of Ram. So he says, oh, writes a song. Oh, have you come walking all this way, knowing the sole purpose of my life is a vision of you? Come, not hiding. Let me see. If he knocks on the door and rings the bell so many times, he may assume there's nobody at home. And whisper, a number of people in the house whispering, shh, shh. That person may go away. No, not at all. Come, have a cup of tea. What can I give you? Let us talk. You have a problem? Yes, I'm a listener. Pure love. So keeping company of those kinds of people, loving people, that's one recommendation. But before that, prayer. What form should the prayer take? Twofold. The one is constantly singing the names of the Lord. Is this a formality? Should we take out a hymn sheet or something like that and do it? No. It is a spontaneous recognition of this love coming through in every aspect of nature. From myself, my own physical and psychological being, to all the resources around me, evoking a feeling of supreme adoration, thankfulness, and wonder. And the more we see it, the more our love increases, so that everything becomes a wondrous dance of praise, a kind of Pentecostal movement, as it were, spontaneous movement. And every religion has versions of this where there is a charismatic aspect to it. Spontaneously, you want to dance for joy, or sing for joy, or whistle. Some external expression that is a response to an internal rise, an internal stirring of the nectar of love that comes out, and you don't care who sees it or who knows it. All inhibitions have gone. In other words, egocentric positions are removed because the attention is on the other. Then the next thing, lovingly repeating God's name. It's just, we find an echo of it in human love. So in human love, you think of somebody you love very dearly. Every time you think of them, are you not repeating their name? Are you not in a way calling them? Because the name is equivalent to the person. The name and form is the same. You can't think of the person without naming them, without forming some kind of conceptual image of them. So the same thing, if you're constantly repeating the divine sacred name, will they not come to your mind? Will they not be present to you? Will you not be enjoying the loving presence of your most beloved? Always constantly doing it. Feeling the upliftment, the nectar, the blissful presence of the divine. Will that not increase the lovability factor? It will. And then from time to time, going into solitude, that means having a revaluation of a kind of discrimination where you have the time and space to evaluate things. Things pass. Things are of temporary nature. But what is behind them, what is constant, is that being which you can put in devotional terms. The lover will never desert me, will always be present with me. Other things will pass, but this will remain the same. In the Bhakti Yoga system, this is the kind of evaluation. So what is the renunciation involved? It is not a deliberate move. It happens by itself. The things fall away. As you outgrow the small loves, the big love replaces it. Effortlessly, easily. And that is why in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there's this evaluation. No, fix your mind on me. That's the highest thing. If you can't do that, then recall me from as often, as frequently as you can. Constant remembrance. And constant remembrance, that's called Abhyasa Yoga. Constant remembrance, carefully cultivated, ultimately becomes a fixed position. Thinking of that being all the time, even in the midst of activities, a kind of undercurrent is there, constantly there with you. And then even if you can't practice that, there's still scope. Well, you can offer all your activities Godwards, or the fruits of your activities, ultimately. So there is scope for everyone and everything. Surely if you love somebody, you'll offer them whatever is there. You'll give everything you have to them. Surely that will be the position. All of it, therefore, is a cultivation of this love. And what will flow to you, it'll be something like a nectar that is occasionally there in the beginning, comes and goes and doesn't flow. But when the obstacles are removed, it flows. Primary obstacle being this desire, and desires come from an egocentric position, namely, yes, I am in love with myself. A kind of narcissistic position that looks in the mirror and compliments oneself. This is a modern position. I have to raise my self-image. I have to love myself. How will you do it? Tell myself how valuable I am, how worthwhile I am. It has a certain value, but it also has the imprisoning effect of making you orientated in a corporeal way, identifying you with your own self and entrenching love of yourself instead of love of the other. This love of the other, this spontaneous movement, comes naturally, easily. When you notice this flow, this nectar flow, understand it's not coming from you. It's coming from deep within you, from that supreme lover who loves you sufficiently to not only reciprocate your love, but also increase it. Increase it. And so for that reason, prayer is the great method. The Bhakti Yogi, says Swami Vivekananda, knows the meaning of life's struggles. He understands it. He has passed through a long series of these struggles and knows what they mean and earnestly desires to be free from the friction that they produce. He wants to avoid the clash and go direct to the center of all attraction. The great Hari, what does Hari mean? The one to whom we are attracted. This is the renunciation of the Bhakta. This mighty attraction in the direction of God makes all other attractions vanish for him. This mighty infinite love of God, which enters his heart, leaves no place for any other love to live there. And then the question comes, how can it be otherwise? This love, this bhakti, fills his heart with the divine waters of the ocean of love, which is God himself. There is no place there for little loves. It's a displacement mechanism. That is to say, the bhakta's renunciation is that vairagya, that sense of non-attachment for all things that are not God. These result from anuraga, or great attachment to God. And then he finishes like this. This is the ideal preparation for the attainment of the supreme bhakti. When this renunciation comes, the gate opens for the soul to pass through and reach the lofty regions of the supreme devotion, or the state that he's talking about, this whole section, parabhakti. Then it is that we begin to understand really what this supreme devotion is. And the person who has entered into the inner shrine of the parabhakti alone has the right to say that all forms and symbols are useless to him as aids to religious realizations. You see, it is that person alone has attained that supreme state of love commonly called brotherhood of man. The rest really only talk. He sees no distinctions. The mighty ocean of love has entered into him, and he sees not man in man, but beholds his beloved everywhere. That's the key. Initially, it's in one place, but as soon as that's revealed, he sees this dressed up, like Tyagaraja. Oh Lord, have you come walking all this way, knowing that the sole purpose of my life is a vision of you? I see you dressed up in this way, and everywhere I look, I see you dressed up. And so through every face shines to him his beloved Hari. The light is the sun or the moon, is all his manifestation. And whenever there is beauty or sublimity, to him it is all his. You put the ownership, shift the ownership in a different direction. His manifestation. So wherever and whenever there is beauty, it is sublimity, a process of sublimation, not taking it at surface value, face value, but tracing it back to see what is behind that, shining through it. To him it is all his. Such bhaktas are still living. That's encouraging. The world is never without them. Very encouraging. Holy Company, therefore, is a great, great support in this. Such, though bitten by a serpent, only say that a messenger came to them from their beloved. Such people alone have the right to talk of universal brotherhood, much in need today. Everybody talks about peace, the fraternity of man. We're all one human family and so on. That's okay. But sometimes you're not a member of my family, so we'll put you outside. So the universal brotherhood that we are seeking as a practical solution to world problems will have that aspect, this universality, which is only there through this penetrating love, this loving vision where we see all forms, not only in all forms, but flowing through all forms as, and then also beyond, and gives us a spontaneous love of everyone, everywhere, for all time, without restriction. So these are a few thoughts on the subject nectar of love. And so we finish up. Thank you. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Merci.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Merci beaucoup, Swami.
Merci beaucoup. Bonsoir.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Merci.
Yes, Swamiji.